All right, it's been a little while since this came out, and I haven't read it yet. I read like the 12th, 13th, 14th Twitter files, and I've really been waiting for the Fauci files to drop, and I don't know what's ever going on with that. But let's dive into this. I haven't read it. I've put it off, and I think it's time to buckle up and just go through this Twitter files number 15 here from Matt Taibbi. All right, so let's see what we have to say here. Move over, Jason Blair, Twitter files expose next great media fraud. Oh, Twitter files expose next great media fraud. All right. I think we just need to call this out on the bullshit it is. All right, so what is this? So, okay, so this is about Hamilton 68. So this video here is about Hamilton 68. I don't actually know much about that, so I wish I could comment more on that. But this is interesting. So this is Yoel Roth saying this about the the Russian bot stuff, calling it BS. Uh, let's see here, and this is a little bit frustrating. Okay, so here we're just getting more from Yoel Roth, and he highlights this falsely accuses a bunch of legitimate right-leaning accounts of being Russian bots. Right. So this is what back in we have 2018, and okay, and so before they were pushing the Russia narrative, before Yoel was celebrating his meetings with the FBI, I think his daily meetings with the FBI, or I don't know if they were daily, but his frequent at least. And let's see what else we have here. Virtually any conclusion drawn from it will take conversations in conservative circles on Twitter and accuse them of being Russian bots. And this is probably more from Yoel Roth. Yeah, and so Project Osprey, we did read about that before. Yeah, so here he's just saying they're right-leaning users. These accounts are neither Russian nor bots. So they don't, and he says strongly. So I think that's some kind of my suspicion there is that some kind of learning algorithm that is giving a prediction of whether an account is Russian associated, and it's saying that it is, and then it has some sort of strength indicator in this prediction. And so that's why he's saying neither strongly Russian nor strongly bots, because they appear to be real users and they don't appear to be Russian leaning. These quotes by Twitter execs about Hamilton 68, a digital dashboard that claimed to track Russian influence, was the source of hundreds, if not thousands, of mainstream print. Okay. So these are comments about Hamilton 68. Okay. Okay, so somebody here behind Hamilton 68, we track Russian accounts. Okay. So they were just making up stuff about Russian accounts. Okay. So some of this stuff is making more sense now. Okay, so these are all comments about the Hamilton 68 dashboard. Got it. And this Alliance for Securing Democracy. God, these people are insane. Okay. And here we go. So Matt first shares the quotes, and then he explains what these things are. Okay. These are quotes by Twitter executives about Hamilton 68, a digital dashboard that claimed to track Russian influence and was a source of hundreds, if not thousands, of mainstream print and TV news stories in the Trump years. Interesting. Okay, and it's interesting. These were all Yoel, right? Like, yeah, all of these Twitter executives were all Yoel. Okay. The dashboard was headed by former FBI counterintelligence official and MSNBC contributor Chris Watts. MSNBC contributor. I mean, that's right there, right? I mean, we've read several MSNBC articles on this channel, and in MSNBC, I mean, the language tells you how to feel about what they're talking about, right? Their language is so heavily biased and so heavily um, trying to influence you to feel a specific way. It's kind of gross. And I what did I call it? I called it really lazy. Like, this is MSNBC is the lazy man's news, because not only do they tell you the news, they in their language they tell you how to feel about it. All right. Alliance for Securing Democracy. Gross. The ASD Advisory Council includes non-conservative writer Bill Kristol, former ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul, ex-Hillary for America chief John Podesta, and former heads or deputy heads of the CIA, NSA, and the Department of Homeland Security. Imagine all of our three-letter agencies trying to lie to us. All right. News outlets for years cited Watts and Hamilton 68 when claiming Russian bots were amplifying an endless parade of social media causes against strikes in Syria. In support of Fox host Laura Ingraham, the campaigns of both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Yeah. One tiny corner pushes back against Russian disinformation. Oh boy. Yeah. So all this Russian nonsense. And supporting Bernie and Trump. So the Russians were supporting Bernie and Trump and discrediting Hillary, because Hillary wasn't capable herself of making people hate her. It had to be Russians. Hamilton 68 was a source for stories claiming Russian bots pushed terms like deep state or hashtags like Fire McMaster, Schumer shutdown, walk away, release a memo, Alabama Senate race, Parkland shooting. Right. Yikes. Yeah, Mother Jones. Gosh, what trash. And I've never heard of whatever Fast Company is. CNN, and Politico, yeah, of course they're printing this garbage. The secret ingredient to Hamilton 68's analytical method? A list. Our analysis, has linked 600 Twitter accounts to Russian influence activities online, was how the site put it at launch. Yeah. Okay. Hamilton 68 never released the list, claiming that Russians will simply shut the accounts down. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Matt. All those reporters and TV personalities making claims about Russian bots never knew what they were describing. That's not surprising. For what it's worth, Rosenberger and Fly disclose their methodology on their website and say they can't reveal the list of 600 accounts they are following, or the Russians will simply shut them down. They're certainly consistent from what we've seen from Russian-linked accounts. Rosenberger, who spent years in the Obama White House and State Department, laughs at the idea she's a neocon plant. Though it's true that their advisory board contains both liberal Russia experts like former Obama ambassador to Moscow Mike McFaul, as well as a favorite Greenwald bête noire, the original neocon Bill Kristol. Twitter executives were in a unique position to recreate Hamilton's list, reverse engineering it from the site's request for Twitter data. Concerned about the deluge of Hamilton-based news stories, they did so, and what they found shocked them. All right, let's see what they say. I found their API key, which is a mysterious art I can't quite describe. They like that. All right, so Ugh. All right. So what does this mean? So I found their API key. So this is from Yoel, which is a mysterious art I can't quite describe. And then looked at which user IDs they were passing as parameters to their user timeline endpoint. Curious, what was the methodology for reverse engineering the accounts? Typo, 644 accounts. Is this all Yoel? This might be all Yoel. It's interesting. Okay, here they're blocking who said this, but this is Yoel. All right, at long last, I've been able to reverse engineer the list of accounts behind the Hamilton 68 dashboard. The securing democracy people have never been willing to release the list to anyone. Full list here. Okay. The dashboard includes 648 accounts as opposed to the 600 they claim. The selection of accounts is bizarre and seemingly quite arbitrary. They appear to strongly preference pro-Trump accounts, which they use to assert that Russia is expressing a preference for Trump, even though there is not good evidence on any of the accounts. All right, let's discuss strategy on how we want to use this information. I think it can help us refute a lot of thinking in DC based around the dashboard. Yoel. So this I find really interesting. I found their API key. I found it. I stumbled on this big string of letters, numbers, and whatnot. Probably, there might be dashes, but there's not going to be like percent signs or anything in there. Probably. Most likely. It depends. I don't know how Twitter makes their API keys. But, okay, so this big long string, their API key. And what is an API key? So I want to get information from Twitter. And so, but I don't want to go to Twitter and browse. I want to write software that's going to go and check a bunch of posts and maybe look for keywords and do different things. And so how do I do that? Well, to talk to Twitter, I needed to use their application interface, their API. And to authenticate myself against their API so Twitter knows who I am when I'm making these requests and whether I have authority to make said request, they give me an API key. Now, in theory, Twitter's not storing that API key, maybe. I mean, it depends. It depends on Twitter's security policies. So I found their API key. To me, sounds like he went to their account and looked up their API key in the database. I don't know if that's how he found it, but that to me seems like the likely situation. But it's hard to say. I mean, it might have been a little bit harder than that. He might have had to look through a bunch of different people associated with that and found which one of them has an API key. And anyways, these accounts, they concluded, are neither strongly Russian nor strongly bots. No evidence to support the statement that the dashboard is a finger on the pulse of Russian information ops, hardly illuminating a massive influence operation. Right. Okay, so this is Nick Pickles who says that, not Yoel. In layman's terms, the Hamilton 68 barely had any Russians. In fact, apart from the RT accounts, it's mostly full of ordinary Americans, Canadians, and British. It was a scam. Instead of tracking how Russia influenced American attitudes, Hamilton 68 simply collected a handful of mostly real, mostly American accounts and described their organic conversation as Russian scheming. Yeah, that sounds right. Twitter immediately recognized these Hamilton-driven news stories posed a major ethical problem, potentially implicating them. Real people need to know they are being unilaterally labeled Russian stooges without evidence or recourse. Yeah, they do. It looks like Roth back in 2017, 2018 was actually, he wasn't part of the apparatus yet. It looks like some Twitter execs badly wanted to out the Hamilton 68 after Russians were blamed for hyping the Parkland shooting hashtag, one wrote. Why can't we say we've investigated and citing Hamilton 68 is being wrong, irresponsible, and biased? Yeah, why can't you? Yuval Roth wanted a confrontation. My recommendation is at this stage is an ultimatum. You release the list or we do, he wrote. However, there were internal concerns about taking on the politically connected alliance. And so here we already see them folding. We have to be careful in how we push back on ASD publicly, said future White House and NSC spokesperson Emily Horn. I also have been very frustrated in not calling out Hamilton 68 more publicly, but understand we have to play a longer game here, wrote Carlos Munch, the future senior advisor to Transportation Secretary Pete. Secretary Pete. So legitimate people, as one Twitter exec called them, never found out they'd been used as fodder for mountains of news stories about Russian influence because the Twitter files contains a list they've been influenced. Okay. All right. So that was kind of a weird statement, but I think what he's saying here is that the people who were Russian influence didn't find out now until the Twitter files dropped. I'm shocked, says Sonia Mansour, who as a child lived through civil war in Lebanon. Supposedly in a free world, we are being watched at many levels by what we say online. Of course you are. Of course you are. They have access. They're going to watch. Oops. I've written a book about the U.S. Constitution, says Chicago-based lawyer Dave Shitokas. How I made a list like this is incredible to me. I mean, I don't think it really should be, right? Maybe this is me speaking in 2023, and you know, in 2018 I would have been a lot more shocked. I don't know when they found out, right? It's probably much more recently that they found out about this. In 2023 in America, I'm not shocked at all. In 2018 America, I probably would have been pretty shocked. When I was growing up, my father told me about the McCarthyite blacklist, says Oregon native Jacob Levitch. As a child, it would never have occurred to me that this would come back in force and broadly in a way designed to undermine rights we hold dear. Yeah, okay. Yep, as a child, I would have been shocked too. Even Twitter execs were stunned to read who was on the list, wrote policy chief Nick Pickles about British comic some dude. Holborn Laws. A wind-up merchant. I follow him and wouldn't say he's pro-Russian. I can't even remember him tweeting about Russia. Basically as a wind-up merchant. Old Holborn. So he just, I guess, winds people up with his comedy, is what they're saying. I'm listed as a foreign bot, said conservative media figure Dennis Michael Lynch. As a proud taxpaying citizen, charitable family man, and honest son of a U.S. Marine, I deserve better. We all do. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough, dude. Consortium editor Joe Loria, too, was angered to find he was one on the list, which targeted voices across the spectrum. Organizations like Hamilton 68 are in business to enforce an official narrative, which means excising inconvenient facts, which they call misinformation. Absolutely. What makes this an important story is the sheer scale of the news footprint left by the Hamilton 68's digital McCarthyism. The quality of headlines and TV segments dwarfs the impact of individual fabulous like Jason Blair or Stephen Glass. I wish I knew who these two were. Hamilton 68 was used as a source to assert Russian influence in an astonishing array of news stories. Support for Brett Kavanaugh or Devin Nunes manual. The Parkland shooting, manipulation of black voters, attacks on the Mueller investigation. Okay. Right. So the Hamilton 68 dashboard did all these things. It drove attacks on all of that. Yeah. Accounts promoted the Blexit movement, encouraging black voters to leave the Democratic Party. These stories raised fears in the population, and most insidious of all were used to smear people like Tulsi Gabbard as foreign assets and drum up sympathy for political causes like Joe Biden's campaign, describing critics as Russian aligned. Yeah, gross. Incredibly and ironically, these stories were also frequently used as evidence of the spread of fake news on sites like Twitter. Yeah, but I mean, yes, and Mother Jones, I mean, I'm sure lots of people read it. I think they went out, right? Did they not go out of business? But they're absolute garbage. It was a lie. The illusion of Russian support was created by tracking people like Joe Lauria, Sonia Mansour, and David Shatokas. Virtually every major American news organization cited these fake tales, even fact-checking sites like Snopes and PolitiFact. Right. What did this one say? Russia's social media efforts in 2016 were not just false, but inflammatory. Huh. Okay. I don't understand. Russia's social media efforts in 2016 were not just false, but inflammatory. Okay. Right. Okay, so I see how that's pushing. I was misreading that. I thought they were saying that Russia's involvement was false and inflammatory, was false and therefore inflammatory. But no, they were saying that the Russian accounts, what they did was false and inflammatory. I misunderstood. Okay. Twitter didn't have the guts to out Hamilton 68 publicly, but they did try to speak to reporters off the record. Reporters are chafing, said Horn. It's like shouting into a void. Right. Okay, yeah. Roth was offended by the idea that tweets on certain themes suggested subversion. Can we talk about how incredibly condescending? If you talk about these themes, you must have been duped by Russian propagandists. Again, even Roth, like most Twitter execs, are an ardent Democrat partisan, saw that the Hamilton scheme would lead people to assert that any right-leaning content is propaganda by Russian bots. At least two other research institutions that use similar methodologies were cited as sources in news stories were also criticized on Twitter email correspondence. MSNBC Watts and the Washington Post political Mother Jones, which did at least 14 Hamilton 68 stories. Right, and I think they're not around anymore, but I'm not 100%. Oops. The Alliance for Securing Democracy and the offices of politicians like Dianne Feinstein all refuse comment unless this counts. You can find information describing published in 2017. Oh man. This was an academic scandal as well. As Harvard's, Princeton, Temple, NYU, GWU, I don't know what GWU is, and other universities promoted Hamilton 68 as a source. Ooh. Perhaps most embarrassingly, elected officials promoted the site and invited Hamilton experts to testify. Dianne Feinstein, James Lankford, Richard Blumenthal, Adam Schiff, of course Adam Schiff, and Mark Werner were among the offenders. The mix of digital McCarthyism and fraud did great damage to American politics and culture. News outlets that don't disavow these stories or still pay Hamilton vets as analysts shouldn't be trusted. Every subscriber to those outlets to write every subscriber to those outlets to write to editors about the issue. Okay, I don't, that's not a complete sentence. I don't know what that's saying. For more from Twitter Files from Barry Weiss, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Okay. So this was really good. This is really interesting. The whole Hamilton 68 thing. I didn't know much about it. You know, the reality is I was pretty low info until a few years ago, and I'm only trying now really to become higher info. And this
Hamilton 68.
With these videos and with making this content is let's go on this journey together. So cool. So this was really interesting. Thank you, Matt Taibbi, again for all this information. Please, let me know what I can do to be better on this site, to make content you find interesting. Let me know what you don't like. Let me know what you like. Please like, comment, subscribe below if you do like. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day.